Welcome to the first video in the FleetForum.net video series. In this video, I'm going to share how to use the site and give a brief overview of each of the sections. In subsequent videos, we'll be diving into detail on each of the sections. But for today, we're just going to take a look at usage of the site. So first, what we want to do, go to www.fleetforum.net and we're going to log in. You can create your own account by using the form below, and you can also reset your password if needed. In addition, my contact information is here if you ever need to reach out. But we enter our username and our password, hit enter, and we are taken to the configuration generator page. At the top of the form, we can choose which device we're going to use or we want to configure for. And I will note that some of the form possibilities change depending on the device type. So for example, if we take a look at Cisco router configs, we have the option to configure DMVPN, hub or spoke. Whereas if we do a Cisco layer 3 switch, that's not a possibility. So I'd point that out. For today's demo, we're just going to work on a quick layer 3 switch configuration. So basically you can just expand each of the sections and fill out the required information that you need in your configuration. I'll point out that each of these fields are checked, and as you can see, within the hostname field, for example, you can't have spaces. So we'll need to get rid of that, and now it would be legit. But you can tab through, or you can use your mouse and go from field to field. But you can enter your DNS servers. A domain name is optional. NTP servers if you wish. Time zone, NTP offset, message of the day. Welcome to switch 1. I guess technically this is a switch, so let's go ahead and fix that. Now, I can either keep going or I can update config. I prefer to update the config after each sections because as you go down lower in sections, some of the input required, like for example, Ether channel, you have to have some interfaces configured before you can configure Ether channel. So I like to personally do it section by section. Local authentication. And I would point out too that this password is not stored anywhere. Actually, none of this information is stored long term anywhere. And the password that's generated is type 9. So I couldn't even, it couldn't even be hacked or decrypted if I wanted to. VLANs. So what we can do is we, just like normal switches, we need to create our VLANs. We can give it a name if we wish. And make it a layer 3 SPI if we wish. For purposes of today, I'm just going to make a couple of test ones. And I have the option to make this a voice VLAN. I can only make one voice VLAN. So there's our logical interfaces. Let's make some physical ones. The interfaces are dependent on, your switch types. So that's going to change depending on which model you're using. but for purposes of today, let's say our internet is access port 10. Now, since I made this an access port in VLAN 10, I can't fill out an IP or a trunk port until I would get rid of 10. Another item that I'd like to point out is that while looks like there's 5 physical interfaces, this fully supports the range command. So I can say range 10, 10 to 19, and we'll say workstations. And they're all in VLAN 10. Okay. Add my loopbacks if I wish. I can do, we've got multiple options. We've got static routing. And for dynamic routing, we can do OSPF, EIGRP, and BGP. So I can add a default route or specific routes, whatever I wish. And I'm just making up, I don't actually have a design in front of me, so we're just making things up. But as you can see, for OSPF, we really need the process ID, subnets we want to advertise, and the area that it's in. In similar fashion, EIGRP, we need the process ID and the subnets we want to advertise. BGP, it allows you to create up to 2 BGP neighbors and advertise up to 5 subnets. We can configure multicast. We can set a static RP, a rendezvous point, or we can say, hey, this switch is going to be the rendezvous point, and let auto RP take care of letting all subsequent switches know. If you noticed up in our physical and logical interfaces, we have the option to add each of those interfaces to our multicast domain. Cover that in a later video. So for Ether channel now, since we have some interfaces configured, right? I could say gig 101 is in, I want it in an Ether channel. We also have the ability to make a DHCP server pool. You can, including excluded addresses. The only thing you might notice you don't see here is DNS, and the DNS field comes from what you configure in the basic options, right? The domain name and the DNS servers will be part of the DHCP scope automatically. And finally, we can also configure HSRP on our interface, on our physical interface, give it a virtual IP with a priority. So that's a real quick trip through all of the forms for a layer 3 switch. So let's take a look what this creates for us. What it creates is a configuration that you can copy and paste. You can either save it to a text file, you can paste it directly into a router, which is what we'll be doing in subsequent videos when we go into details on all of the sections. But by itself, this is a perfectly complete config. It's not intended to always be a perfectly complete config, but as you can see, we just made a quick device config in just a few minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed listening. I appreciate you listening, and I'll see you in the next video. So long.